welcome. As you settle in and allow your breath to slow, let your thoughts drift back not to the grand triumphs or marble columns often used to summon the idea of Rome, but to something quieter, more ordinary, more real. Tonight, we walk not with emperors, but with citizens, not in golden palaces, but on soot-stained staircases, in crowded streets thick with smoke and chatter, and through the forgotten corners of a city that never truly slept. Ancient Rome was not just an empire of conquests and Caesars. It was a world of careful schedules, noisy apartments, mysterious cults, endless paperwork, and the constant looming hum of administration. Here, order was everything and, yet the world was often filthy, loud, and unpredictable. Behind the glorious facades, life pulsed with discomfort, petty frustrations, and moments of quiet ritual. Let's begin our journey, not with a grand entrance, but with the creak of wooden stairs, and the smell of overcooked lentils drifting through a crowded Roman insula. Why it sucked to be a Roman apartment dweller. Imagine yourself waking to the sound of shouting below your window, vendors setting up their carts, early risers haggling over fish, and somewhere, a donkey braying. You're 5 stories above the street, and the sun hasn't fully risen. You're not wealthy. You rent a room in an insula, one of thousands of multi-story apartment blocks that fill the city. The walls are thin. The floorboards creak. The smell of chamber pots and last night's cooking drifts up from the lower floors. There is no elevator, no plumbing, no fire escape, only a narrow staircase that winds around a central shaft, steep and worn from use. It's easier to just stay in your room. Many do. The building sways ever so slightly in the wind. The walls are dry brick and wood, and the city has no fire department. In the summer heat, with oil lamps burning and kitchens packed close together, the fear of fire is constant. A bucket of water sits by your door, not just for cleaning, but for defense. Not against thieves, but against flame. Your room is small, barely space for a bedroll and a stool. If you're fortunate, you have a window. If not, the only light comes from a crack beneath the door. There is no kitchen. Instead, you carry your food to one of the nearby Popinay Street taverns where boiled grain, lentils, and fried cheese are sold in clay bowls. Meat, if you can afford it, is tough and salted. Most days, you eat whatever's cheapest. Beans, bread, and wine, watered down just enough to keep the sourness at bay. And the noise never stops. Outside, the clatter of wagons, the bark of hawkers, the chants of funeral processions, the shriek of crows. Even at night, the city murmurs with life. You grow used to the constant presence of others. The water supply is shared, the latrines are public, and privacy is a concept more dreamt of than experienced. At the communal baths, you share space with senators and slaves alike. Sometimes you talk, sometimes you don't. But every part of life is observed by neighbors, by magistrates, by the ever-present civic order. Laws dictate how high your building can be, how much grain you may purchase, when you can draw water, even when you can walk in certain areas. Your landlord often absent. He lives in the countryside, in a villa, far from the crumbling stairs and roof leaks you deal with. If something breaks, you fix it yourself, or you wait and wait. But still, there is something strangely rhythmic in it all. Laundry hangs in careful rows between windows. Street performers rehearse the same songs. The baker's boy whistles every morning as he delivers his trays. The local temple bells ring with consistency. Life in the insula becomes a pattern. Repetitive, imperfect, shared. Some nights, you lie awake and listen. Footsteps on the stairs, a baby crying 2 doors down, a woman muttering in prayer to Vesta. The sounds layer gently, like a lullaby for the working class of Rome. And perhaps, if you're lucky, a cool breeze drifts in through the window, carrying the distant scent of pinewood smoke and hot bread. You roll over on your straw mattress. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after. But there is comfort in the repetition, even here in the cracked walls, the thin floor, the fall of Cicero ambition, oration, and the Republic's bite. Imagine yourself now in a quiet marble hall, the kind that echoes with your own footsteps. The walls are tall, the ceiling open to the sky. Cicadas buzz somewhere in the distance. The air is warm and faintly scented with laurel. Here we step out of the apartment stairwells and into the Curia, the heart of Roman political life, where voices mattered more than weapons, at least for a time. And among those voices, one rang louder and sharper than the rest. Marcus Tullius, Cicero, orator, lawyer, consul, philosopher, and in the end, a man undone by the very system he sought to preserve. Let us walk slowly through his world, not through legend or exaggeration, but through the quiet corridors of a mind filled with worry, precision, and relentless ambition. Cicero was born in 106 BCE, not to a noble family, but to an equestrian one wealthy. But without the ancestry that usually propelled men into Rome's upper ranks. He came from Arpinum, a provincial town, and carried that outsider's perspective with him throughout his life. But he had one great advantage, his voice. He studied rhetoric in Greece, law in Rome, philosophy in both. And soon, he rose not by force, but by speaking. His speeches swayed juries. His arguments echoed through the forum. He prosecuted corrupt governors and defended controversial clients with equal skill. In 63 BCE, Cicero became consul, the highest elected position in the Republic. It was the pinnacle of a career crafted with calculation and care. And during that year, he faced a test that would define him: the Catiline conspiracy. Lucius Sergius Catiline was a discontented aristocrat who plotted to overthrow the government. Cicero exposed him with 4 famous speeches, the Catilinarian orations, delivered with rising passion before the Senate. "O tempora, O mores," he cried, "what times, what manners." With those words, Cicero presented himself as the last defender of the Republic. The Senate, stirred by his rhetoric, granted him emergency powers. The conspirators were arrested and executed without trial. It was a triumph, and a mistake, because in that moment, Cicero revealed both his brilliance and his vulnerability. He believed in the Republic, its laws, its order, its checks and balances. But in defending it, he had stretched its rules. He had blood on his hands, however legal it seemed. And Rome was changing. Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, the first triumvirate, soon dominated the stage. Cicero, ever the purist, refused to join them. He was exiled, briefly, then returned. But the Republic he loved was already beginning to erode, and his voice, once so central, grew fainter in the rising tide of ambition and violence. When Caesar seized power, Cicero did not fight him directly. He wrote letters, he philosophized, he retreated into quiet criticism. But after Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE, Cicero saw another chance to restore the Republic. He returned to the Senate with renewed energy, aiming his fury at one man in particular, Marcus Antonius. In a series of 14 speeches, known as the Philippics, Cicero denounced him in cutting, masterful language. He hoped to rally the Senate, to steer young Octavian, Caesar's heir, toward restoring the Republic. But he misjudged both. Octavian and Antony eventually reconciled, and in their political bargain, the Second Triumvirate, they agreed on something chilling: a list of enemies to eliminate. Cicero's name was on it. He tried to flee. He didn't make it. Soldiers found him near the coast, seated in a litter, his face calm, resigned. He stretched out his neck, a gesture, perhaps. The mystery of the Mithraic temples, cults and basements, bulls, and ancient male bonding rituals. Let us descend now, not into the noisy courtyards or the Senate chambers, but downward into stone cellars, quiet crypts beneath the bustling Roman world. The light dims. The walls grow closer. The air is heavier, cool, and still, with a faint scent of wax and wet limestone. You can almost hear your own breath echoing back to you. All around, silence except for the quiet shuffle of sandals over earth. You are entering a Mithraeum, one of hundreds, perhaps thousands, hidden beneath Roman towns and forts. Always beneath, always secret, and almost always the same. A long, narrow chamber. 2 stone benches on either side. An arched ceiling, just low enough to encourage humility. And at the far end, a strange scene carved or painted: a young man, usually in a Phrygian cap, plunging a dagger into the neck of a bull Mithras. This was the god. And this was the mystery. The cult of Mithras appeared suddenly in the Roman world. Sometime in the 1st century CE, it spread swiftly, almost silently, and left almost no written texts. What we know, we've pieced together from archaeology, from the physical remnants of ritual, not the written thoughts of its followers. That's part of the mystery. The silence? Unlike the elaborate public temples of Jupiter or Mars, Mithraic worship was private, intimate, always underground. Membership was exclusive, male only, and organized into grades, with secret rites, initiations, and symbolic meals. Who joined: soldiers, merchants, bureaucrats, men on the margins of elite power, but still within Rome's machinery. They were not senators, but not slaves either. They gathered at night, in firelight, whispering prayers in dead languages, sharing food and wine, reenacting myth. The central image, the Tauroctony, or bull-slaying scene, dominates every Mithraeum. Mithras slays the bull, often assisted by a dog, a snake, a raven. Wheat sprouts from the bull's tail. From death, life. From sacrifice, renewal. But what did it mean? Even today, scholars debate the symbolism. Was it a rite of passage? A reflection of celestial myth? Some believe the figures represent constellations, mapping a cosmic order onto earthly ritual. Others see it as a metaphor for discipline, loyalty, the triumph of civilization over chaos. The cult's secrecy was part of its appeal. In a world filled with public performance processions, sacrifices, orations, the Mithraic cult offered privacy, a brotherhood, a space apart from the grinding demands of the Roman day. Imagine, after a long day on the frontier, a soldier climbs down into this quiet cavern. He sheds his armor, he lights a lamp, he joins his brothers in silence, in myth, in shared understanding. No spectators, no applause, just ritual and firelight. Initiation was complex. 7 levels of membership, from Corax the Raven to Pater the Father. Each had symbols and duties. It was not just a belief system, it was a structure, an identity, something to belong to. And unlike other cults, Mithraism didn't seek to replace Rome's civic religion. Its members still made offerings to the emperor, still marched under the Roman eagle. The cult worked alongside empire, perhaps even helping to reinforce it, and then it disappeared. By the 4th century, Christianity had risen, and unlike Mithraism, it offered universal salvation, not just for men in basements, but for everyone. The secret rituals were replaced with open worship, the private symbols with public creeds. Many Mithraea were abandoned, some were destroyed. The cult faded, its meanings buried in layers of soil and silence. But here, in this quiet space beneath the city, you can still imagine them. Cloaked figures in torchlight, eyes fixed on the bull-slaying god, hands passing bread, whispering sacred words that no one alive can now recall. And perhaps that is the true power of mystery, not in the answers we uncover, but in the questions that remain. Dinner with a senator reclining, class warfare, and perfumed slaves. Now, imagine you've left the shadowed cellars of the Mithraic cult behind. The air is brighter, perfumed, and full of voices not shouting, but a soft din of cultured conversation, low laughter, the clink of glass and bronze. You are no longer in a damp basement with soldiers. You are reclining, yes, reclining on a cushioned couch in the opulent domus of a Roman senator. Welcome to the Senna, the Roman dinner party. Here, time stretches luxuriously. The hour is late, the business of the day is done. Outside, the city dims beneath a fading sun. But in this marble-clad triclinium, the formal dining room, the night is just beginning. Let us stay here a while. The triclinium, literally 3 couches, was arranged in a horseshoe shape around a central table. Guests reclined on their left elbow, freeing the right hand to eat. This position was not only practical, it was a display of leisure, of not needing to work. To recline was to be civilized. To sit upright was to be a servant. Or worse, you did not simply show up to such a dinner. You were invited, chosen, and where you reclined revealed your rank, your favor with the host, your importance in the subtle and ruthless hierarchy of elite Roman life. At the center of it all, the host. Perhaps a man like Marcus Terentius Varro, or Cicero, before his fall. Someone of stature, who had climbed Rome's ladder through politics, patronage, and ruthless calculation. He would nod politely as guests entered, each announced by a slave. Behind him, more slaves moved quietly, fanning, pouring wine, adjusting lamps. The cena began in 3 distinct acts. The gestatio, a kind of appetizer course. Light dishes, olives, lettuce dressed in vinegar, small fish, boiled eggs with garamna, fermented fish sauce that seasoned nearly everything in Rome. Then the prima mensa, or main course, often several roast meats, wild game, stuffed dormice, seafood drizzled with honey and herbs. Platters were brought in on silver, warmed or cooled with hot coals or snow. The air was rich with spices, pepper, cumin, coriander, cinnamon from the east. Finally, the secunda mensa desserts. Dates, figs, pastries soaked in wine, honeyed nuts. This was when the wine flowed more freely, diluted with water, but not less potent. Conversation grew looser, poetry was recited. Slaves performed music, some read aloud from Homer or Virgil, but beneath the perfume and laughter, the dinner was a performance of power. There were rules unspoken but firm. One did not speak out of turn. One praised the host's taste, his collection of statues, the clever mosaic on the floor. One laughed politely, even when the jokes turned cruel. And the slaves? They moved in the background, ever present, but invisible. Fanning guests, wiping spills, washing feet, even offering perfumes between courses. Some were born into this life. Others were educated Greeks, captured in war, serving as entertainers or tutors. A few might catch the eye of the host, earn manumission, rise to positions of trust. But most remained as shadows, quiet, careful, and ever watchful of their master's mood. To a guest, the abundance was astonishing. To the slave clearing bones from the floor, it was routine. This contrast between elite comfort and the daily grind of the masses defined Roman society. While a senator feasted on oysters and partridge, a baker's apprentice in the Subura ate barley porridge and lentils, sitting on a stool beside the oven's heat. While musicians played beside marble fountains, plebeian families shared tenement walls with strangers, lulled to sleep by street noise and the occasional rat. And yet, the elite's wealth depended on the toil of those below, farmers in the countryside. Sailors ferrying grain across stormy seas, miners deep beneath Iberian hills. The Senna was not just indulgence, it was theater, and every bite, every sip, were echoes of empire. And now, we return from the city of marble and clay, from the soot and spice, from whispered cults and candlelit banquets. Rome fades, gently, like the glow of an oil lamp after the last guest is gone. The footsteps of senators and slaves, of merchants and matrons, grow quiet behind us. You have walked its streets, climbed its crumbling staircases, felt the warm press of its crowds, the chill of its temples, and perhaps, just for a moment, smelled the garum in the air. Through this slow drift across time, you've seen how most Romans, those who didn't write the histories, lived not in glory, but in cluttered rooms, noisy streets, and relentless routine. They lived in apartments where fire was a constant threat. They dined simply, unless invited elsewhere. They joined strange brotherhoods in candlelit basements, seeking something sacred, or perhaps just a place to belong. They rose early, worked long, and hoped the grain dole would last another week. And for the few who ruled the senators and aristocrats, they too were bound. Bound by politics, by ambition, by rituals and reputations that had to be maintained at all costs. For every marble arch and golden statue, there was someone sweeping beneath it. For every banquet reclined upon, there were 10 hands preparing the food and 5 more pouring the wine. It was, in the end, a civilization of systems, of laws and ledgers, of sewage and census scrolls, of gods and gossip, of bureaucracy and bricks. And still, it endured. Rome endured through floods, through fire.